RuneScape 3 has quite a lot of things that you might want to spend money on in this game. There is so many different items, there is so many different sort of paths you can take, and money comes and goes very quickly. So I figured I would make a video talking about worthwhile investments for pretty much everybody that almost every player will benefit from at some point in their adventure. So the things in here are going to go from low level players towards higher end players, but probably not the absolute end game people. But either way, if you're interested, stick around, leave a like if you enjoy and if you find something new in here, and if it does help you out whatsoever. Do subscribe to the channel if you are new. Other than that, let's go. So these are not going to be in any specific order, not from like earliest things that you should get towards like the latest things. It's just going to be things that will be worth your time getting, and you'll have to just decide yourself whether it's time to get this now or whether it's time to wait a little bit and get a different thing instead. Okay, so that being said, the first thing that I'm going to start with is the Double Surge Codex. You can buy this on the Grand Exchange for around about 75 million gold coins at the moment of making this video, was the very last trade. That being said, looking back from the past month, the average price does seem to be around about 65 mil. So I would say anywhere in between those numbers would probably be a good guess. Now, the Double Surge Codex does exactly what you probably imagine it does already, if you don't already know. It gives you another surge so you can do a double surge. Obviously in it, of course that's what it does, double surge, you know. Okay, we just want to cover I just wanted to cover everything, okay? So this can be incredibly useful from early game all the way to end game, and even though it is quite expensive, you would expect this to 100% be a later game upgrade. That being said, if you are someone who really wants to get around doing quests and stuff a lot quicker, this may have a use earlier on for you as well. But keep in mind, there is probably better things you could spend 75 mil on as a lower level player. But like I say, this is really useful for getting you around the game. So if you're doing quests, if you are doing anything like clues, if you are even just doing PvM, Double Surge is incredibly useful, and it will save you a lot of time when you are traveling from place to place, but it will also be incredibly useful in PvM as well. So the earlier you get it, the more use you're going to get out of it for quests and for clue scrolls and anything along those sort of lines. However, later on in the game as well, it's going to still hold its value. It's still going to be incredibly useful for PvM in certain situations. Having Double Surge, like elite dungeons for example, getting through them a lot quicker, or even just other places like Telos. If you used your surge a little bit too soon and you know that you need to do the uppercut soon, having that second charge of surge is incredibly useful. Now, this will not give you a double escape, as they are completely different. You will have to buy a double escape codex. So if you do use escape, when you do have the double surge, it will put surge on cooldown without giving you the second charge. So you could decide whether you want to get both of these. Personally, I find double surge to be plenty and not really need the double escape, but I'm sure it will have its uses in some places as well. So like I say, this would be completely down to you whether you think getting this early on will be absolutely worth your investment on saving you time on quests and traveling around the map, or whether you just want to wait until later on to get it while you're doing PvM, as like I say, incredibly useful. So that was our first one, Double Surge Codex, definitely something worth investing into. Next up is the Scare Tactics Ability Codex. There's going to be a few ability codexes in this list, but not all, okay? So don't worry if you're just thinking, is he just going to tell us that all the ability codexes are worth buying? Because while most of them are, I'm talking about the specific ones that aren't necessarily like Greater Ricochet or Greater Chain. Scare Tactics Ability is something I get asked a hell of a lot on stream. What is that ability you have, Keybound to W? The one that looks like a mask. That's Scare Tactics, and it's really useful. The answer that I normally give is it's really useful in places like Elite Dungeons, because what it does is it will actually push back the target that you use it on, and it's really useful for clustering up like groups of monsters into one big pile. And that's exactly what it does. It will give you different abilities for your stuns on each ability style of magic and range. So for example, on magic, your ability Impact and Deep Impact will be replaced with Shock and Horror. The difference between these abilities from the other ones is that it will push back the targets by one tile, but it only works on small targets. It doesn't work on the other ones. It only works on smaller ones. You can't push like a big boss, for example. It literally just does like the same things. There's no stun time lost in this, so don't worry if you want to replace these altogether. It does not like lose any stun time. It literally just adds the actual knockback bit. These abilities are not extra abilities. They will share the cooldown with those, so you can't just add them all to your bar and have 4 stuns. They will share the cooldown, so you can't use Impact and then use Shock straight away, as they will both be on cooldown. But like I say, these are incredibly useful, and there's some tricks you can do with these. For example, if you have chin chompers on and you use the one on range, it will push everything that's hit by the chin chompers back together, so you can actually push back a big group of monsters. You can also push smaller bosses like Taraket in Elite Dungeon 3 over to a different square, meaning he will phase a different way first. So you can make him spawn the big corpse carrier in ED3 first, rather than just spawning the normal way. So there is some uses for this, and it can be really useful. Like I say, in Elite Dungeons, it's probably the biggest place that I've noticed it, but it can also have some uses at places like Legions, as you can apply a bleed, use shock, and push that boss back by 1 square, meaning it does walk the bleed when you normally would not be able to do this to the boss. So these abilities can be incredibly useful, but they are pretty niche and they aren't really like the most important thing in the game. But for the price of around about 5 million GP at the moment, which is hella expensive compared to what they used to be when I bought it, but for 5 mil, I would say unlocking this ability is something worth doing. So the third thing that I believe is going to be worth it for investment from every player pretty much, like I can't see anybody not finding this useful and worth the time, is going to be the mobile perk from Invention. Invention allows you to add perks to your armor, your weapons, and it's incredibly useful. For those of you that are just getting into the game and aren't exactly sure how it works, what you want to do is use different materials into gizmos, and when you put those materials in, you will get different perks out. The mobile perk specifically reduces the cooldown of Surge, Escape, Bladed Dive, and Barge. This is incredibly useful in a lot of situations, as of course, one, if you have double Surge, the cooldown of that is reduced for both of those charges, and it allows you to zip around the map a lot faster, but also it's going to have use in PvM, as using Surge or Bladed Dive in PvM is incredibly useful, and getting around different arenas and dodging mechanics with Bladed Dive or Surge as well is definitely something you can do. So having them off cooldown a lot more often is incredibly useful. The main thing you're going to get out of this though is just being able to use Surge a lot more often, use Bladed Dive more often, and just basically that's the main thing. You'll be able to travel around much quicker, and using this again while you're doing questing and stuff, I will specifically make sure I have my mobile perk active on myself if I'm doing any quests, because it just saves the time. Traveling quicker, using Surge more often, honestly, it's definitely worth having. So usually if you're going to get this perk, you will sort of tie it in with another perk as well. So you'll try and get something like Biting 4, for example, and then you'll have the mobile perk as an extra with that. So that is what I've done with most of mine. However, if you're not a PvMer, you don't do PvM whatsoever, you can probably just grab this perk by itself, which is pretty cheap, and chuck it on anything like an Enhanced Excalibur or something like that, so that when you do Bladed Dive, you've got it on that, or you can just keep it equipped, and it's nice and cheap. So 100% worth getting this, because mobile perk, while all it does is reduce the cooldown of those abilities are incredibly useful and valuable to have the cooldowns reduced. This next one, not so convenient for everybody, like every single person, but a lot of people. Most people in this game will get into PvM at some point. They will try and learn bosses. They will have some sort of situation where even if you're not focusing on PvM, maybe you want to go for any sort of achievements, make sure you've got all the achievements whatsoever, and you may want to get the Reaper sort of challenge. So having a Ring of Death is the next item we're going to talk about, is incredibly useful, because it's going to reduce your death costs while learning PvM by a hell of a lot. Honestly, it really will, because the death costs in this game at the moment, as of making this video, can get incredibly high. If you're PvMing with like best in slot gear, you can expect death costs of up to around about 11 to 12 mil, going even higher depending on how many switches you bring. For the average PvMer, like high-end top tier PvMer, top tier gear, not top tier skill, but top tier gear PvMer, you're looking around about 11 mil. When you start getting into the fact of you're chasing like these personal records and stuff, and you're bringing ridiculous amount of switches to save a couple of seconds just so you can chase like huge personal records, you end up pushing yourself up to stupid numbers like 15-20 mil per death, because you don't want to use a Ring of Death at that point. However, if you are someone learning, a Ring of Death is 100% worth bringing, because no matter how many like switches, how much gear you have with you or whatever, your death cost will always be the same depending on the price of an Onyx. It will be the certain amount of charge per Onyx on the ring, so you do end up saving a lot of money, especially as learners. So people who are learning and getting into PvM, I would 100% suggest investing some money into a Ring of Death if your death costs are higher than the actual per death cost that this has. Find out the exact cost of death while wearing the Ring of Death. You can just go to the Ring of Death wiki page and it will tell you. For example, at the moment, it is around about 327k per death. Now, when you think about the fact that you may be learning Raksha and your death costs are 5 to 10 mil maybe, if for a learner, you want to be saving that 4.7 mil every time you die, because that's a lot of money saved. Yes, you have to charge this with a Onyx, but you know what? These are pretty cheap in comparison. Trust me, worth getting if you're learning PVM, worth getting if you're just someone chasing the achievements, for example, just getting the Reaper tasks done. So honestly, this is a good thing to use until you get to a point where you're incredibly comfortable at certain bosses and you no longer feel like you need it. Okay, moving on to the next thing is going to be Grace of the Elves. This is an expensive item to get, but incredibly useful for anyone who's going to be doing any skilling, which even PVMers are going to need to do skilling at some point, because you're going to probably want to work towards max, as it can give you great perks for your PVM experiences, and this is going to be something that can make you a ton of money if you get lucky, but also if not, it does kind of pay for itself, and it gives you better supplies along the way. Not to mention the fact that it can store up to 500, I believe, porters in it, so it will actually be able to send items to the bank that you gather as well, and give you some great teleports for the max garden portals that you can direct to the Invention Guild or to the Deep Sea Hub or many other places like Fairy Ring and all that sort of stuff. So the Grace of the Elves is around about 85 million GP at the moment, so it's probably not going to be something that you pick up like stupidly early on, right? But if you are someone who is going to be investing a lot of time into skilling, maybe you're going for 120s, maybe you're going for 200 mils, but in all honesty, even for people going for 99s, if you can get your hands on a Grace of the Elves early, you're going to be able to pay yourself back with it, and it gives you so many benefits like I mentioned before. The way this works and the way it pays itself back is, as you are skilling, you will get random Seren spirits appear nearby. Once you click on those, it will automatically deposit an item into your bank, and it's random from the rare drop table. Because it has access to the rare drop table, if you are wearing a Look of the Dwarves with the tier 4 look when this happens, you can actually get yourself the Hazelmere's Signet Ring. For those of you that don't know what this item is, it is an item that can have the very small chance of dropping a double drop when you get a drop some other places. I said that terribly. It can double a drop that you get on a very small percentage chance, but this is incredibly rare and is valued at around about 3.2 to 3.5 billion GP on the previous trades in the last few days. So as you can imagine, if you get one of these, one, it pays off the Grace of the Elves many times, but so it makes you a very rich person. Don't expect to always get one of these though. They are rare. They are incredibly rare. Not many people do get them from the Grace of the Elves, but they are probably like common enough to the point where you're sort of thinking like, you know, it's definitely worth getting this. But not to mention the fact that you're going to get the drops from the Grace of the Elves as well, the Seren spirits. The drops from that will add up, and they will end up being more than the money you spend, assuming you do get this thing like not 10 minutes before you're going to max, for example. As long as you get this thing early on, it's definitely going to pay itself back value wise, even without the rare drop. But also consider the fact that it does allow you to store up to 500 porters in it as well. This thing is hella useful in so many skills on making it a lot more AFK. It makes archaeology ridiculously AFK. Like without this thing, I bought this for archaeology. I bought this and probably lost money on it because I bought it to go from level 85 to 99 archaeology. That's all I did with mine because I just didn't get it any time earlier on. I was already maxed before I realized it was good. But because of the AFK, like for archaeology, I bought this. It was worth it just for me, just from that. So for anyone else who's going to be getting this earlier on, going towards max or getting any skilling done whatsoever, going for those high XP rates or anything like that, this can be incredibly useful, and I would suggest that this is a good investment for most players. Guys, I promise this video isn't going to go on too much longer. We have 2 more things I want to cover in this video, and then we'll just crack on and we'll get to the outro and we'll end it, and you guys can be like, okay, and that's enough for today. We'll maybe make another one of these. Let me know in the comments if you're interested in hearing another one. Anyway, this one is going to be Reaper's Gifts. The Reaper's Gifts are an item that you buy from the traveling merchant, and they will award you with Reaper points. Now, when you buy these, it kind of feels like you're just throwing money away, and a lot of people I know don't buy these because they're like, man, these are 1.25 mil each. 1.25 mil for 20 Reaper points? That doesn't sound a lot. Well, you're wrong. Trust me, these are these are worth it if you have the spare money around. In fact, no, these are worth it anyway. Buying one of these bottles will usually give you around about 4 mil profit, depending on the price of a Hydrix, but at the moment, about 4 mil profit per buying one of these bottles if you do end up trading in the Reaper points for an uncut Hydrix. So you get a lot of money out of these. They're definitely worth it. What they will do is allow you to save up your Reaper points quicker, and then once you've got the Reaper points you need for a Hydrix, go to death, buy yourself your Hydrix, sell the Hydrix if that's what you want, or make whatever amulet or any jewelry you want out of it. And trust me, these are incredibly good profit, and you definitely want to pick them up when you can. Whenever you see the traveling merchant having these, you want to get there, you want to join one of the friends chats or whatever that tells where the world is for these, and you want to be picking these up. They are definitely worth the money investment, and I would suggest that you keep investing in them because technically they're free money, and who doesn't like free money? I know I do, so you definitely pick these free money bottles up. Next up, I'm going to be talking about, guess what? Another ability codex. Damn, these are definitely worth it though, so I promise guys, if you haven't already got these, you're going to want to get them at some point, probably when you start getting into PVM. However, they do have more use earlier on as well, which I will mention because I like to talk about absolutely everything it seems. So the codex I'm talking about is Corruption Shot or Corruption Blast. It is the Mazcab ability codex that you buy, which is from raids. You can buy it from the Grand Exchange for around about 58 million GP at the moment. Damn, they've gone up from what I remember, but they are definitely worth the money for Corruption Shot and Corruption Blast, as they are an extra bleed ability and these are incredibly useful. So what these do is it will apply a bleed to a single target to begin with, but then it will spread across to all nearby targets and nearby enemies, and it will do a bleed damage over time, which slowly reduces in damage, but it starts off pretty damn high. As you guys can probably work out, these are incredibly useful for killing off groups of mobs, but not only that, they are still worth using on single targets as well, as it will do more damage than most basic abilities will, bringing them to one of the best abilities that you can get for basics. So unlocking this will absolutely increase your DPS. It will also be incredibly useful for a lower level player if you have the spare money wanting to level in places like ED3 or in the Abyss, because it will apply a bleed effect to everything in the area, killing them off a lot quicker, meaning you will level up quicker, and of course that's a good thing, right? That's worth it. So if you have the money spare and you haven't got this, I would suggest yes, looking at investing into one of these when you think the time is right, because every PVMer, every person who wants to level anywhere whatsoever that is useful to kill anything quicker is going to be getting some benefit out of this. Honestly, these are abilities you'll be using forever. They're not going to get just chucked off to the side and not used. Also, it is worth mentioning that bleeds actually do better healing when you are using Soul Split, and if you're using an Eldritch Crossbow, it is actually one of the better abilities to use with that too, using the Split Soul special attack. So these abilities are 100% worth getting in so many different ways. So absolutely, if you don't have these, maybe you should consider getting one. Okay, one more thing, the last thing, and this is going to be mainly for earlier on players, but yeah, let's say earlier on players, but kind of all players either way, because these are incredibly useful, incredibly time-saving, and at the moment, incredibly cheap. Silverhawk feathers. Now, every single player gets Silverhawk boots. You just have to go into your oddment store and claim them for free. You can do this by clicking your currency pouch, clicking on oddments, and then claiming your Silverhawk feathers for absolutely free. Now, once you've got those, you can buy Silverhawk feathers from the oddment store. You can do that, but I wouldn't recommend it. Oddments kind of have more value than that at this point, because the feathers are ridiculously cheap on the Grand Exchange at the moment, and what these feathers do is if you charge your boots with them and wear those boots while you are running around, or every time you use an ultimate or other specific things in game, you will gain agility experience per charge. Now, it can be quite expensive to train your agility just this way, but the way that feathers have dropped, it is ridiculously worth it. It is absolutely worth spending a bit of money on these feathers, especially if you're looking to get your agility up for specific things, or you know, you want to max at some point. Most PVMers even are still going to want to max to get that max cape perks and stuff, and yeah, you can do your agility ridiculously easy with this. By the time you come to actually needing to do agility, you will look down and you'll be like, hey, this is pretty much nearly done. You can get 99 agility purely from these feathers, using your Silverhawk boots, charging it with the feathers, and doing other skills in the game. Trust me, this is absolutely worth it, and I would suggest that early level players even spend a little bit of extra cash that they have, just the spare money they've got laying around from upgrades and other stuff they're focusing on. Dump it into some feathers, make sure your boots are charged up, and wear these any chance you get when you're not needing to wear something else, because training your agility with very little effort, almost no effort whatsoever, there is definitely worth doing. That being said, there's going to be people in the comments saying, but I like agility in it. I enjoy agility. You guys, one, are crazy, but two, fair enough, don't do them. Don't use them then. But I mean, if you like agility, you probably want better agility experience, and using these while even running agility courses, if you do enjoy that clicking craziness, then you know what, they're still worth wearing at those places too, as it will increase the amount of experience per hour that you get, unless you like agility to the point where even though you hit 200 mil, you'll keep doing it. In that case, I don't know what to suggest for you guys. You are still crazy, and I wish you all the best at the agility courses. Oh no, I hope no one gets offended by that. Does anyone actually really enjoy agility to the point where they keep doing it after 200 mil? If there is somebody, let me know in the comments, because I want to meet them. I want to know what's going on. Let me know. Alright guys, that brings us to the end of this video, and I'm not going to make this outro ridiculously long because you know what, the video is pretty long itself. So other than that, I hope that you found some use in this video. If you did, you know what to do. There's a like button, give it a click, subscribe to the channel if you are new here and you enjoyed this video. I make stuff like this all the time. I make a lot of random videos that just kind of don't fall into a category anyway. Just whatever I think of and think that's worth making, I will do that. Otherwise, if you would like to hear more things like this that are worth investing into, let me know in the comments and I will do a second one. I will do a part 2. Otherwise, thank you to the channel members that support the channel that bit extra each and every month. Your names are on screen, of course, and have been probably for the last few seconds. I really do appreciate it. If anyone else is interested in joining them, click the join button, buy the sub button, and you can see what perks you get. Other than that, thank you all so much for watching. I really appreciate that too, and I will see you all in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye.